My name's Thomas. Have you ever gone through something so wild that you stop and think, is this really happening? That's what this was for me. I came home one evening after a day at work. But when I got to my front door, the key I'd used every day for years suddenly didn't work. I tried again. Same result. I knocked. I called. I even stood there, hearing voices inside, knowing full well someone was home. But nobody opened the door. I remembered my mother-in-law told me earlier she had changed the locks on my own home. I had thought she was bluffing, but what she didn't know was that they had just lit a fire they weren't ready for. She had no idea what was coming. But before I get ahead of myself, I need to take you back. Because a situation like this doesn't just pop out of nowhere. There's a build-up. A trail of red flags and ignored signs led to the explosion. And to understand why my own wife's mother thought she had the right to kick me out of my house, you need to know how everything started, right from when I first met Gabriella. So let me take you there. I met Gabriella at a business summit in Dallas. At first, it was just small talk. You know how those events go. One minute you're exchanging business cards, the next you're stuck in one of those buffet lines. So during this period, we got talking about business and growth ideas. After the event, calls turned into meetups, meetups turned into dinners, and next thing you know, we're spending every weekend together. Our relationship didn't feel rushed. We worked well together, and eventually we started working on each other, our relationship, our goals, and our future. After a while, we decided to get married. Now, our wedding was kept simple. Just a priest, a few close friends, and us. We weren't trying to exclude anyone. It just felt like something we wanted to do on our own, without all the noise. Looking back, I think that early decision kind of set the tone for how we saw ourselves as partners, choosing each other without needing approval from anyone else. After the wedding, we took time to visit each other's families. Gabriella met mine first. My folks are pretty laid back, the kind of people who believe in letting others live their lives. They welcomed her like one of their own. My mom especially was happy I'd found someone who challenged me and matched my drive. But when it came time for me to meet my wife, Gabriella's family, that's when I first got a sense that things might be different. I remember walking into their home, trying to be respectful and make a good impression. Most of her family was polite, except for one person, her mother. From the second I walked through that door, she looked at me, scanning me head to toe, looking for something to criticize. She didn't say much that day, but it was all over her face. Disapproval and skepticism. At first, I thought she was just being protective of her daughter's well-being, that she'd warm up to me over time. Spoiler alert, she didn't. If anything, that was the beginning of something I didn't realize would grow into a full-on war over time. Because while Gabriella and I were trying to build a life together, her mother had other plans. Plans that didn't include me being in the driver's seat, or maybe even in the car at all. But I'll get to that soon. Now, up until this point, I'd say our marriage was fairly stable. We weren't perfect, no couple is, but we were functional. We communicated, we shared responsibilities, and we had plans. What started becoming a steady thorn in our relationship, though, was Gabriella's mother. Her presence was like a slow drip. From the moment she heard about our marriage, she had something to say about everything. And I mean everything. She critiqued the way we handled money. She critiqued how we furnished our apartment. She even once had a full-blown opinion about the kind of dog we should adopt. And we weren't even planning to get a dog. Some of her comments, I'll be honest, weren't entirely wrong. She's a sharp woman. There were times when she pointed out things that, maybe we didn't fully think through. But more often than not, it was obvious that her criticism was less about helping us and more about putting me under a microscope. I could breathe the wrong way, and she'd have an issue with it. It felt personal, like she had already decided I wasn't good enough for her daughter, and was now just collecting evidence to prove her point. At first, Gabriella and I didn't push back much. We figured her mom was just trying to be helpful in her own way. We looked at it like her delivery was off, but we understand her point. So we tried to take it in stride by smiling and nodding politely at the unsolicited advice. We assumed it came from love. But over time, things shifted. Her feedback turned into control. It wasn't suggestions anymore, it was instructions. And it became clear that every decision Gabriella and I made as a couple had to pass through her mother's filter first. Whether it was about our finances, our vacation plans, or even how we handled small arguments. Eventually, I started to feel it weighing on me. So one day, I brought it up to Gabriella. I told her calmly that I felt like her mother was crossing boundaries and that we needed to start making our own choices without outside interference. And that's when Gabriella hit me with one of the most frustrating responses I've ever heard. So what, you want me to throw my mother away? That wasn't what I was saying at all. I just wanted space for us in our marriage. But she made it clear that was an option. From that point forward, I realized I wasn't just married to Gabriella. I was, in a way, married to her mother too. And because I loved Gabriella, I decided to let it go. I told myself it wasn't worth the fights. Gabriella and I both worked full-time jobs. She had her own career, and I had mine in different companies. From early on, we agreed that since we were both bringing in income, we'd split the bills. But here's the thing. Split didn't mean 50-50. I took on the heavier end. Gabriella handled her part, mostly the utilities, her car note, and a few other personal things. She never really complained about it, which I appreciated. And to be honest, I didn't mind it either. I was raised to take responsibility, so I didn't see a problem with it. Until I found out someone else did. That someone else was her mother. Now, I didn't go snooping through Gabriella's phone on purpose. One day, she handed it to me to look something up while she handled something in another room, and a message popped up from her mom. Curiosity got the better of me. I tapped on it. Her mother had asked for money, and Gabriella had sent some. But in her reply, she told her mom she couldn't send the full amount because she had bills at home to take care of. Her mom wasn't happy about that. She wrote something like, "Why are you even paying bills in that house? You deserve better." And that's not all. She went on a rant about how I was wasteful with money, said I was selfish, irresponsible, and didn't know how to manage a household. She made it sound like I was out here blowing cash on nonsense while her daughters struggled to survive, which couldn't have been further from the truth. What really got to me, though, wasn't what her mom said. It was what Gabriella didn't say. She didn't defend me or correct her mother. She didn't say, "Mom, he pays most of the bills, and I'm just doing my part." Instead, she just told her mom that she was fine with the way things were. And look, maybe to some people that seems like enough. But when your name's being dragged through the mud, especially by someone who already doesn't like you, it felt like she was silently agreeing while her mom painted me as the bad guy. That moment stuck with me. It wasn't just about money. It was about what gets said behind your back when you're not in the room. And once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. I start paying attention more carefully, wondering what else has been said, what other assumptions are being made, and how long it's been going on without my knowledge. After 3 years of renting apartments and making do with temporary places, Gabriella and I finally managed to put down 30% on our dream home. It was a major step for both of us, financially, emotionally, and as a couple. We'd always said we wouldn't start a family until we had a place to truly call our own. So when we signed those papers and got the keys, we were pumped. It felt like we were finally settling into the life we'd worked so hard to build. But the high didn't last as long as I thought it would. I began noticing that Gabriella's mother was somehow always involved in our decisions, even the ones that were supposed to be just between husband and wife. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized just how often Gabriella was updating her mother on things that were happening between us, especially our disagreements. Eventually, I started checking Gabriella's messages with her mom. I know that's a breach of privacy, but I needed to understand why it felt like there were 3 people in my marriage. And what I found only confirmed my gut feeling. Gabriella wasn't just venting to her mom. She was relaying every single disagreement, sometimes within minutes of it happening. And her mother? She wasn't giving advice. She was giving directions, telling Gabriella how to respond, what to say, even suggesting that she stand firm on issues I thought we were compromising on together. One message, in particular, still sits heavy with me. Her mother told her that since Gabriella had contributed to the house, it should really be in her name. As if I hadn't just put down more than half of the deposit. That was the moment it hit me. Her mom wasn't just being opinionated. She was actively sowing division. And Gabriella was listening. She probably thought she was just getting help from someone she trusted. The resentment started building quietly at first. Let me tell you about the day everything truly fell apart. Up until that point, I had taken a lot of hits, emotionally, mentally, even financially, for the sake of keeping the peace. I kept telling myself that marriage required patience. But there's a limit. Everyone has one. And the day I found out what Gabriella did with our joint account, that was it for me. It was a regular morning. I was getting ready for work when I received an email from the bank. I got into our joint account banking app. A large chunk of money had been moved out of our joint account. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a scheduled bill, and it definitely wasn't a purchase we discussed. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I checked the transaction details. It was a direct transfer to my wife's mother. I stood there for a few seconds trying to process what I was seeing. I felt betrayed, not because she gave her mom money, but because she took our money without talking to me first. We'd both agreed that large transfers would be discussed. That was the trust we had built. Or so I thought. I confronted Gabriella immediately. I just asked her, "Why did you transfer that money to your mom without telling me?" She looked at me, completely unbothered, like I was the one being dramatic. Then she hit me with, "My mom said you'd react like this. She's always right." That sentence broke something in me. I was done trying to be the bigger person. I snapped. "I'm tired of your mom always getting involved in our marriage," I said, probably for the first time in a way she couldn't ignore. And she lost it. She called me ungrateful, controlling, and told me I had no respect for her mother. We said things we couldn't take back. I wish I could say we were just venting, but it went deeper. There was venom in our words that morning. Pain. Years of silent resentment finally boiled over. I left for work thinking, okay, that was bad, but it'll blow over. We'd had fights before, rough ones even, but nothing we hadn't eventually patched up. I had no idea that while I was away, the story was about to turn into something out of a nightmare. While I was at work, Gabriella must have called her mom, probably crying while replaying only her side of things. I don't know exactly what she said, but I know how her mother operates. She's not the type to give advice and leave it at that. She acts. And that day, she did exactly that. She hired a locksmith while I was gone to change the locks on the house Gabriella and I both lived in. She took it upon herself to decide that I no longer belonged there. And just to twist the knife, she texted me, "Don't bother coming back. The house is my daughter's now." I thought she was bluffing. I genuinely did. I finished work for the day, still furious from the morning fight, but hopeful that we'd talk it out. Maybe there'd be an apology, or at least some kind of explanation. But when I got to the house that night, my key didn't work. At first, I thought maybe I was inserting it wrong. You know, a tired mind playing tricks. But after 3 tries, I knew something was wrong. I knocked. I called Gabriella. No answer. I could see lights on. I saw movement. Someone was inside. But nobody came to the door. When I realized my keys weren't working, it's hard to describe the feeling of standing outside your own home. I thought about calling the police right then, but I hesitated. I didn't want to create a scene in front of the neighbors, or worse, give Gabriella and her mother a reason to paint me as the unstable one. Even when you're the victim, being a man in that situation can work against you. I wasn't about to give them that power. Eventually, I went back to my car and just sat there in silence. That's when I realized this wasn't something I could fix by talking. So I called my lawyer. He didn't sound surprised. He told me not to argue, not to try to force my way in, and definitely not to go back to the door. He told me to book a hotel for the night, so I'd have a place to stay. I did exactly that. Once I checked in, he said he would handle the next step, and that meant involving the police. The next morning, things moved fast. My lawyer filed an official complaint, and the police got involved immediately. Turns out, what Gabriella's mother did, changing the locks without notice or a court order, was considered an illegal lockout. In our state, that's a criminal offense. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. It was a legal one, and she had crossed a line. Within days, the police showed up at the house with a warrant. Gabriella's mother was arrested. My lawyer filed a civil lawsuit on my behalf. We sued for damages, for the mental and emotional distress I'd been put through, and for the cost of being forced out of my own home without any warning. Hotel expenses, legal fees, emotional turmoil. We documented everything. Then came the public fallout. Gabriella and her mother were dragged into court, and everything became part of the record. It wasn't just whispers anymore. Family, friends, neighbors, all of them got wind of what had happened. Her relatives started calling me, texting me, showing up, asking me to please drop the lawsuit. They said her mother made a mistake, that Gabriella didn't mean for things to go this far. But the truth is, someone had to be held accountable. And if Gabriella didn't have the spine to stop her mother from ruining our marriage, then she had to feel the weight of the consequences, too. So, before the legal case with the lockout even wrapped up, I went ahead and filed for divorce. At that point, I wasn't interested in waiting for anything. The truth is, I was done. I had been walking on eggshells in my own marriage for too long, and the moment her mother changed the locks to my house and tried to erase me from my own life, that was it. That was the final nail. The divorce process wasn't fast, though. It dragged out for several months. Between the lawyers, the court dates, the paperwork, and the tension, it wasn't easy. When it all finally came to an end, the judge gave the final order. The house had to be sold. I took my share of the profits, closed that chapter, and never looked back. After that, I packed up my life and moved away. I didn't tell many people where I was going. I didn't want advice or pity or people asking me if I'd try to fix things. I didn't want to fix anything. I wanted to start over. The first few weeks were weird, but little by little, I started feeling like myself again. Looking back now, I see how much I tolerated. Not just from her, but from her mother, and even from myself. I kept telling myself things would get better. But the truth is, I was ignoring the signs. I was pretending not to notice how controlled I had become. I learned that peace isn't something you beg for, it's something you build. And I should have protected mine a lot sooner. I should have spoken up louder, acted faster, and never let someone else's influence run my marriage. Now that I've had time to really sit with everything, I know there are lessons here. Ones that hurt to learn. And maybe by sharing them, someone else out there will catch their own red flags earlier than I did. So let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have stayed longer? Left earlier? Fought differently? Handled it better? I'm not perfect, and I'll never pretend to be. But I hope this story helps someone else figure out their next step. And if nothing else, I hope it reminds you that you deserve peace, and nobody has the right to take that from you.